Good evening, everybody. I'm Andreas13, and this is the Nassau Channel. And in today's studio, we have Mr. Fred Brewington, Esquire. And as you know, last week, there's been a tremendous uproar, tremendous media coverage about discrimination on all levels, not just on racial levels, but on all levels at, of all places, Estee Lauder. Thank you to the show.
Pleasure being here. Pleasure being here, Andres.
Just when last year they came out that Long Island was one of the most eighth racist places in the country, we have this at Estee Lauder in little old Melville. The tape that you played for us when you came to our studio was totally disgusting, and I thought that I have heard dirty BET acts. I thought I've heard it all. What is going on in this corporate environment at Estee Lauder?
Well, Andres, one of the things that's pretty clear here is that what we have seen at Estee Lauder may be just the tip of the iceberg. What we've seen from them is that they project one corporate identity out to the community, but with regard to their employees, with regard to those individuals who are in the company, they're treated totally different. And that goes for women, that goes for African Americans, and more importantly, in this case that's pending now, which is Russo and Smith and Rogers against Estee Lauder, it's also with regard to a gentleman that has stage 4 cancer, disability, who went to them and stood up for what he thought was right, stood up for African Americans, a white man, by the way, and they basically told him to get back. He was rebuffed, and then they terminated him. And what he did was something which was brave. He went and recorded his supervisor, the director of corporate credit, who showed his true colors, showed his colors about race, showed his colors about women, and Estee Lauder, who caters to women, obviously, in terms of their perfume products and their cosmetic products, should be ashamed of themselves.
I had a comedy club in 1991. I've been on music tours with some of the hardcore rappers. I have never heard the language that this executive spoke in my life. And I don't understand. And what's so shocking about it and appalling is that he was speaking just as a matter of fact.
Well,
he was speaking in a matter of factly, like this is the basic mindset of the people that he's around.
Well, that's exactly what was being complained about. What we were seeing was complaints being made by employees, particularly African American employees, and they were being told essentially that they were crazy and that they were experiencing this day in and day out. One of the things that makes it very clear that this is a real situation is the fact that he was acting matter of fact. He thought that nobody was watching or listening. And just like we saw in Los Angeles with regard to Rodney King, if there wasn't a tape, Rodney King would be just another person who was trying to run away from cops. But since there's a tape now, this pulls the cover off of it.
Now, this has 7 counts in it. You want to tell us some of these counts? Because I've heard he called the lady a voodoo, the black lady a voodoo, a jungle bunny. I've just heard a slew. And then he told the guy when he was coughing, he was like, hurry up and die. Are you going to die on me? I'll throw you right out. We're passing the cemetery.
Right. He said, I'll take you to Pine Lawn. And this is a man that has stage 4 cancer who has been battling against cancer. He had colon cancer. He had liver cancer. He had 3 or 4 operations, bilateral lung operations. He was trying to beat cancer and working hard at it. And the only thing that his boss, this gentleman, could say to him was, you sound like you're going to die on me. I'll drop you off at Pine Lawn. And I'm leaving out the curse words.
The expletives.
Yeah, and in this situation, it's pretty clear that this lawsuit, which raises issues of discrimination based on race, based on gender, and the pornography that was being let loose in this corporate environment, which I don't think we can show really.
Oh, no, we can't show any of this,
okay.
But
It's outrageous, including discrimination based on federal statutes, state statutes, and breach of contract. Because one of the things that Estee Lauder says out there in the community is that they project themselves as being leaders in the corporate community, treating their employees right. They even have a campaign where they go against breast cancer. It's called the Pink Ribbon Campaign, Well, here
That's a big campaign.
big major campaign. And in this situation, with the true colors of what was being experienced by African Americans whose complaints were ignored. We're not just talking about they complained and they did something about it. Complaints were made, they were ignored, not by low-level administrators, but by senior vice presidents. The tape that you heard is proof, but the tape that you heard was taken to the high-level supervisors, vice presidents of Estee Lauder, and they told Mr. Russo, take the tape away, we don't want to hear it. How dare you tape a coworker? And he said, wait a second, what about the fact that this coworker is making statements about what's going on in the workplace? They dismissed him and basically told him that he was putting his job in jeopardy. And you know what they did? They terminated him. They terminated him, they terminated Yolanda Smith, who also made complaints, and they passed them all over for promotions.
What was Yolanda Smith complaining about?
She complained about being referred to as a nigger, that the word nigger was being used commonly by white employees and her superior.
In reference to herself?
In reference to her and black people generally.
Okay.
She complained about the fact that she was referred to as a bitch, and I'm sorry I have to use that term, but a
black one as well.
And also that the way that she dressed and the way that she looked like she should be on 42nd Street. When she complained about this to her superiors, to not just her superiors, to human relations superiors, they told her that she needed to toughen up, shut up, and do her job.
Well, just in case people out there are just tuning in, we have Fred Brewington, attorney, for a new lawsuit against Estee Lauder, a 7-count lawsuit for racial, sexual, gender,
disability,
disability discrimination. And I mean, here on Long Island, the racism is very rampant, but it's very, undercurrent.
It's insidious. And I think that that's the way we have to look at it, because when you change the spots on a leopard, it's still a leopard. But you just don't recognize it to be a leopard until it gets up on you and takes a swipe at your throat. And that's what's been happening to these individuals who are now bringing this and being brave enough to step out and say what they experienced. Because the leopard that they experienced on the inside, they are now showing the leopard's true spots on the outside.
Now, when the stock companies started being found out, like Enron, and cooking their books, and a whole slew of companies started falling that road, do you think that this is something that's going to be indicative of corporations here on Long Island?
Well, if people are willing to explain, and we're going to be very clear, there are some corporations that are good places to work. There's some corporations where they won't tolerate stuff like this, and we should applaud them for that. But when a company projects itself as being a leader in the corporate community, as Estee Lauder claims that they are, and in their most recent press release concerning this lawsuit, they said that they are a responsible citizen in the corporate community, that's not true. So that when people like Yolanda Smith and Wayne Rogers and Dan Russo stand up, they need to be applauded for outing these people. What I suggest to people out there and your viewers to do is to search their conscience and understand that this thing that has been documented, not only on paper, but on tape, when it's been documented in that way, that they should search their conscience and make a decision as to whether or not they're going to take their hard-earned dollars and support a corporation that not only has this going on, but that was given the opportunity to change it and refused to change it. Because Dan Russo took that tape. He took the tape directly to the highest people in Estee Lauder and said, let me show you on this tape what's going on daily. And what they told him was that they don't want to hear the tape. They kicked him out of the office. He had a lawyer there at the same time. And they kicked him out of the office, and then the next year, he's out. He's gone.
Well, the plaintiffs in this case, what do they, I understand there's a monetary situation that they want, but what changes do they want to be implemented at Estee Lauder
And
as well as a part of this? What do they want?
That's a marvelous question, and that's why I like being on your show and being here at African American Network, because that's a very important question. What is it worth if they do pay the money, but nothing changes for the next brother or the next sister or the next person with a disability comes in and faces the very same thing? So in this lawsuit, they have asked the court for injunctive relief to try and remedy the past acts of discrimination and to change the entire corporate structure for the future with regard to the possibilities of further discrimination. And that's an important part of this lawsuit. Not to demean the fact that it's a $70 million lawsuit against Estee Lauder, which for them was an $80 billion corporation, is a drop in the bucket. But it is important to understand that unless suits like this are brought, we're not going to be able to change these mammoth giants who think that they're impervious to anybody's questioning.
Now, you have been a civil rights attorney for really going into the big part of maybe 22 years.
It's just about right.
22 years of fighting for the rights of disenfranchised people, people who feel that when they're going through a situation, there's no hope. You did just speak briefly about people in the workplace where this is going on. What would you tell a person who was like the employee who was just fired by Nassau County for calling, using the N-word on the job in other infractions? What would you tell people on the job who are violating people's, civil rights?
Right.
What would you tell them that is going to happen, as well as the people who are witnessing it and hearing about it?
Well, I would look them dead in the eye, just like I'm doing right now, and I tell them that the time in our country has come where actions like that are no longer acceptable, and that if you're going to continue to pursue that road, that people are going to stand up for their rights and fight back. They're not going to accept it anymore as being part of the old guard. Even though you can be more insidious with your racism, it's going to be rooted out, and we're going to try and deal with it. Because the day where we are treating anyone differently because of their color, because of their race, because of their nationality, because of a disability, because of their sexual orientation is unacceptable. Because in this country, we're all supposed to be created equal. And when you started treating people differently because of who they are rather than what they can perform and do, that's wrong. And our laws say that we're to be protected. So people need to wake up quick.
Once again, if you are just tuning in, I'm Andreas 13, and we have in our studio Fred Brewington, Esquire, and he's the lead attorney on class action lawsuit against Estee Lauder.
Well, it's not quite a class action yet.
It's not a class
it may
action.
be.
Okay.
When I was leaving the office after filing this lawsuit, we received just another 3 or 4 calls, so they're starting to come in.
And we're bringing it to you live, Estee Lauder. Very hostile workplace environment.
It seems as though that for these plaintiffs it has been, and from the calls that we're getting, that it seems to be consistently hostile.
Being that I'm in the line of work that I'm in, how does this affect a person, health, working in an environment where they're subjected to such discrimination?
Well, the discrimination is the action, but the fallout of it is dehumanization, a point where you start to feel less than the human being that you are because people are taking from you your humanity. There is demoralization, there is embarrassment, there's humiliation, and then that leads to all sorts of depression, ones that you don't even notice. People that go through this process never fully recover. Now, a lot of folks will say, and I hear this from a lot of judges too, that someone hasn't been harmed that much simply because they were discriminated against. Well, I can tell you that people never fully recoil from this. They may start at point A, but by the time they've been discriminated against, they never respond back to point A. They always respond, but they get to point B. They never get back to where they started because they've had that part of their humanity stripped from them. And that's something that's not like a scar from an automobile accident. It's something that's on the inside. And that's why when I see clients who have gone through this, I encourage them. Go, if you are feeling depressed, which a lot of people are, and they don't even recognize it, go and get some professional help, because if you're going to fight this battle like these three people are doing, you're going to need the support mechanisms to be able to do it. And the help is there also to try and make you feel better about who you are as you stand up to make this fight, because people have to understand this is a fight.
Now, what do you feel that Estee Lauder's position is going to be when they go through this, and what are they saying?
Well,
what is their position now that it's out there in the universe? What is their position?
I did read their press statement, and their press statement basically said that they weren't going to be commenting on it because it was a matter that was in litigation. The bottom line is, whether or not they comment on this lawsuit, they still have to answer to the public. And the public should be asking a lot of serious questions about, is this true? Let them deny it to the public so that when that tape is played, all the truth will be aired. Because the bottom line for Estee Lauder is that they have a clear opportunity here to do three things. One, to set the record right and take care of these individuals who stood up and brought this action. Two, to clean up their own mess in-house. And three, to apologize to a whole lot of people that they have inappropriately dealt with over the years and try and set the future right by their current actions.
I must say again, the actual, some of the statements that this man was saying, I mean, I have never heard, I mean, he talked about doing certain acts, illicit acts to his boss's daughter.
Right. And just so you know, this is not a low-level supervisor.
Well, yeah, well, you know,
this is a director.
How much was he making over
Director of corporate credit, making, well, let me put it this way, he was making well over $100,000, probably closer to $200,000, had responsibility for making decisions of promotion, had to hear complaints of discrimination and wrongful treatment, and he was one of the individuals that sat in when one of the plaintiffs here made complaints, and he was sitting there while complaints were being made, didn't say anything, and there's a reason why.
So you're saying to me this person who's actually on the tape and made all of those horrific statements about everybody, he is the person one of the people at the job where you go and complain to about discrimination?
He was, in their corporate policy, they require that you go and speak to a supervisor and you try and go up the chain of command, which makes sense, by the way. But if you're going up the chain of command and it happens to be that one of the people in the chain of command has the attitudes that he expressed on that tape, there's no way that you're going to succeed. Whether or not you got a disability, whether or not you're a woman, or whether or not you happen to be an African American, and God forbid that you're all three.
I'm going to ask you a question about you now. Is this a spiritual thing with you, Fred? Because truly, whenever you get involved with lawsuits of this size, things really do change. Things happen, and people get help. I mean, what is it with you and these kind of lawsuits? What is it? It's a spiritual thing?
Well, I can just say that, you know, I do consider myself to be a person that has a deep faith in God, and I'm an avid believer of Jesus Christ and the teachings of Jesus Christ. And when I deal with these issues, I don't leave my Christianity behind me. I bring it with me. And what I am taught is that, but for the grace of God, there go I. And if I let something happen to other people when I have the power and the ability to affect change, how dare me do that? That's a sin in and of itself. It's a sin of omission. So when we stand up and good people like Daniel Russo and Yolanda Smith and Wayne Rogers stand up and take a stand, they shouldn't stand alone. And all of us in the community should stand up and say, hey, look, if that's happening to somebody else, it could be me. And if it could be me, I need to stop it right now.
So basically, I mean, the Supreme Court rendering that just came down, very vague, very murky. Mm-hmm. I mean, is this going to be something that we're going to be seeing more of? Because it apparently, when Clinton was in office, he was doing his race relations kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And after that, you know, nothing. Do you think that we're going to see more of this type of lawsuits coming out, or we're going to actually try to reach a higher ground?
The courts are full of these types of lawsuits. They just don't get to see the light of day because a lot of them get squashed on technicalities. A lot of the judges don't want to deal with them. And unfortunately, I should say that it does take a certain level of sensitivity to be able to understand and appreciate what's going on in America today. And if you're not out there experiencing it, some of this stuff could be almost unbelievable. And when judges have to make decisions, and we hope that we choose good judges, sometimes they're not making the right decisions because they're not with the same or the right information to make the decisions. But I can tell you that the courts are full of cases like these, and they are very, very difficult cases to win and to get to the level where a Supreme Court is going to review it, or even an appellate court such as the Second Circuit Court of Appeals. But what we have to do is tell people that when this happens, that they need to document in paper, on paper, write, respond. Do not let things that happen to you go unresponded. And they need to make sure that they get date, time, place, witnesses down. Because when that N word is used and it's heard by 3 or 4 people, there are going to be a bunch of people that are going to want to erase that from their memory. But you need to document who was there so we can jog their memory at a later time. Because they will turn around and tell you, just like they told Dan Russo and Yolanda Smith, that you're out of your mind. This doesn't exist. The tape tells different.
Well, you know what? When I look at this, I think about one person, Ashcroft. And do you think that this is a technical weapon of mass destruction, the way that they discriminate? Is that because this is something that we can find, because I know we just had I don't know if it was a war or whatever you want to call it, where they were looking for weapons of mass destruction.
Sure.
Now, this is the type of stuff Ashcroft should be responding to. This is a weapon of mass destruction.
This is a serious crime against our societal norms. And when we deal with that, this is the type of thing that can be detected. All you got to do is scratch the surface. But if you're not willing to scratch the surface, if you're willing to do what we used to call the okey doke, and just say, well, is everything okay? Oh, it's okey doke. Then we're never going to get to the point where we can get this out in the light. If Mr. Ashcroft and the other cronies in Washington, D.C. want to close their eyes to this, just like they closed their eyes and lied to a lot of people in America today, we're in a dangerous time. When we start talking about issues of Ashcroft, we start dealing with homeland security, and we start dealing with issues of the Patriot Act and the proposed Patriot Act 2, which your viewers need to go on the internet and look up, because it is even more insidious than the Patriot Act itself. It may very well, if ever gets through Congress, give them the ability to expatriate someone simply because they believe that you are saying something that they don't agree with. In other words, take away your American citizenship simply because they say so, without trial, without counsel, without opportunity for due process. All that is out there, and people need to go on the net, see and put in if they can get anything on Patriot Act 2, and take a look at what's been proposed and what's been discussed in the halls of our Congress. It's scary. This is not a time in America where people need to sit back. They need to step up and be American. I'm not saying do anything that's wrong, because remember, the country was founded on individuals who wrote a Declaration of Independence that if you read it today, and I have it with me, if we get a chance on a break, I'll get it and I'll read some portions of the Declaration of Independence to you. And if I read it to you today, you would stand firm and say, that's what we're talking about today. Those very men and women that were fighting in the background at that time stood up and opposed the King of England for what's happening right now in America.
I mean, well, you said it more appropriately. We have a situation here where this is definitely a smoking gun, something that they can find. And we have Al Sharpton. He's running for president.
Yes, he is.
And we know that he would be in the forefront of a situation like this.
Mm-hmm.
How do you see something like this playing as a national situation, given the fact that this is a national story? It's been breaking on everything, as you indicated. I mean, is this really where America is right now? Is this really where we are?
I want to send a word of caution out, because we sometimes here in New York, particularly, get a sense of a certain level of security based on the fact that we do exercise our freedoms regularly, and we do fight against the discrimination that's clear here. We're able to stand up. But the rest of the country, when we start going further west and going down south, things are a lot.
They just had that shooting with this
Absolutely.
guy, this Ku Klux Klan.
Absolutely.
Racist, just
Things
slaughtered
are a
people.
lot different. So we need to make sure that we stand on the verge of educating not only ourselves, but our other brothers and sisters of all colors, of all races across America, that treatment such as this is unacceptable, because the terms on which we are dealing with it may be very different than someone who's in Tupelo, Mississippi, or may be different than someone in St. Louis, Missouri.
Well, maybe people here too, because I remember you used to wear a bulletproof vest.
Well, I had to for a period of time, and thank goodness.
It's not on today.
No, thank goodness to the Guardians and the Brothers of the Shield, who stood up and said that if your life is being threatened, we're going to be there to protect you for a period of time. And but the important thing is that the message is out there. The message is that people, no matter who they are, don't have to be mistreated in order for us to get along in our society. And if indeed people are being mistreated, we have laws that we have fought for, that people died for, so that we might be able to combat it. And I encourage them to step up and utilize those laws.
I've asked you this in the past. You don't want to run for elected office. And the way that the Supreme Court is right now, I mean, I'm really not that sophisticated when it comes to the legalities of how people get to the Supreme Court.
Mm-hmm.
But in another era, someone such as yourself would be able to get on the Supreme Court, like Marshall, Thurgood Marshall. Do you think that we'll ever be able to get someone like you on the Supreme Court?
Well, when you say someone like me, I'm assuming you're saying someone that has significant enough conscience to stand up and say what's right and what's wrong. Right now,
Exactly.
It is so politically charged in terms of the deal cutting that takes place as to who goes on the high courts, as well as the submarine jobs that are done on quality people. We've got some people that are in the tubes right now that could be great federal judges, great circuit court judges, but they are being torpedoed simply because they would stand up and say, wait a second, that person was treated differently, and under the law, we need to interpret the law to help that person. It's not about winning and losing. It's about making sure that people who have been wronged and harmed have the opportunity to have their rights fully aired and have a fair and equal opportunity to equal treatment. That's not taking place regularly in the halls of our Congress. In some of our courts, it's not happening. Many of the courts, it is happening. We have some good judges, and I want to say that. But there are some people out there that need further education.
Well, there was just a big article about a person who bought his judgeship, years back. Yeah, I'm sure you're familiar with the article. Is it true that that's still, you think that that's still going on? That's got to be.
In some arenas that is happening. I can honestly say that there are many selection processes that are not as politically and monetarily charged as others. But you got to understand that most judges have had some involvement in politics. They're political animals. They've been able to survive the process sufficiently enough to get to the point where they can convince either a party or a group of individuals making a decision to make them judges. And they may be good and fair people, but they are also political animals.
Well, when we were going through the process of leaving our location, you gave us some representation, and one thing struck me when I was speaking to the other lawyer. They weren't communicating with each other, and I asked the lawyer. I said, it appears to me that you probably graduated from the bottom of your class. And he was very much insulted that I had asked him. It was a question because of the way that he didn't know what he was doing. Do you think that there are a lot of lawyers in position who don't have the qualifications or the skills to be where they are?
Well, I don't want to speak badly about people I don't know, but I can tell you that there's a need in the legal profession for people who want to rise to the level of excellence in legal services.
Wow, that was real clean.
And because of that, we should set our standards high. We don't need to be satisfied with mediocrity in terms of representation. We've been through enough in this country, and we continue to go through enough in this country where we don't need to be kicked to the curb by someone who can't do the work. We do have qualified African-American attorneys throughout Long Island. The Amistad Bar Association in Suffolk County stands as a flagship for African-American bar associations in the Northeast, and I encourage people to look that up either on their websites or to look up their number through information. And there you can find young and experienced African-American attorneys who are looking to do the right thing by the community. They're looking for opportunities. And right now, some of those doors are getting shut in their face, not by people in our community, but because they're not being given the full access to those qualified individuals.
Once again, if you're just tuning in, this is the Nassau Channel. I'm Andreas 13, and I'm here with attorney Frederick Brewington with a big lawsuit against Estee Lauder on sexual, racial, and gender and handicap disability discrimination. Tell us some of the judges that you actually admire that are out there. Tell us some of the good guys that you really respect the kind of decisions that they're laying down.
Well, that's a loaded question because I want to tell you, if I fail to mention somebody, I'm in trouble. I will tell you that there are some excellent jurists in our system, both state and federal. Okay. There are also, and that's at the lowest level too, in district court. There are some great legal minds and that go along with being good people. I mean, you can have a great legal mind.
Like Judge Fairbanks.
Well, I'm not going to mention any names.
Okay.
You can have a great legal.
That's one for you.
You can have a great legal mind,
right,
and not connect that to wanting to do good.
Okay.
And you can have a person who wants to do good by other human beings, and not the ability to think their way out of a nutshell.
Wow.
But the combination of those two is a rare commodity when we're dealing with a judiciary that is politically packed, and that's why cross endorsements by parties in selecting judges makes a lot more sense these days when everything starts to come down to, are you Republican, conservatives, Democrat, whatever, and then you have to be beholden to that party for the next time you get elected. With cross endorsements, we start dealing with people who may come from a background that is unconnected politically, but may be the best person to fill the role. And we know, based on elections, not only for judges, but other things, the most qualified and best people don't always get elected.
Well, you know, I just attended basically it was a kind of a convention on fair sentencing going on right now. Mm-hmm. And basically what I got out of that, I gave my my input on how the media can affect trials.
Well, actually, you testified. That's what you did.
Right. Mm-hmm. And what I want to ask you is that, do you feel that in light of all of the past cases where people had money, like the DuPont when he got sentenced to the insane asylum for a murder of an athlete who lived on his compound, and then like the OJ case, and then other cases, do you really feel that to really get true justice in America, that you have to have money?
Well, economics has been and continues to be a part of our society that separates those that have from those that do not have. And I can honestly say that in America, the division based on economics is disgraceful, and it is almost sinful when people do not get the fair shake that they should be getting simply because they don't have the ducats to take care of business. Unfortunately, legal aid in a lot of different ways, they're overwhelmed, and sometimes we don't attract the most qualified persons to legal aid. And I would say there are some excellent lawyers in the legal aid society in Nassau County, Suffolk County, and in the city. But even then, without the resources to combat a district attorney's office that's going to throw everything at you, including battleships and everything else, you need to be able to take them on. And because people don't have resources, sometimes we see that innocent people end up going to jail unnecessarily, not just for 2 or 3 years. We can look at the Central
18
Park
years.
jogger.
Yeah,
I mean,
15, 13
right, yeah,
years.
we're talking about people that lose the prime of their life over the fact that they may not have been able to pay for an expert to test the DNA evidence, or to pay for a police expert that says this tape is doctored, or to deal with any of those. And in this system of, especially the criminal justice system, but also in the civil system, you could have the best case in the world. If you don't have the funds to get it out there and the funds to test the theories that you want to raise, you might as well just put it in your back pocket and sit on it.
And that segues me right into this question. Mr. Barry Scheck in the Innocence Project.
Mm-hmm.
Do you like the way that project is going? Is there any way that you would get involved with something like that, or would you like to see it grow or do stuff in our local area? How do you feel about that?
The Innocence Project is a wonderful, wonderful resource. Unfortunately, they are limited in terms of what cases they can take.
Okay.
And that's a reality. We need more projects like the Innocence Projects, and we also need more of these great foundations that have millions and millions of dollars to give away, to go to the law schools and say, we will fund projects like this to see that people who may have been treated improperly in the legal system may get a good appeal, or will have the opportunity to review certain evidence that was withheld. Because I will tell you, there are many, many people today that the DNA evidence, if released by the DAs in counties like Albany, in counties like Schenectady, where people are sitting up in jail right now and the DAs are refusing to agree to have the DNA evidence that's in their possession released, they would have an opportunity because they would have quality support in trying to get it. Barry Scheck does an enormous amount of work. I mean, he's shown the type of work that he can do, not only in the OJ case, but in other cases where they have done serious work to make people available, or make evidence available to free people. But I can honestly say that projects like that are not the commonality across the country. They are a rarity. And we need to have more of those made available so that we can deal with these questions that are paramount. Most defendants cannot hire a lab to do a DNA evaluation, and unless they are in forma pauperis, in other words, they are found to be without the necessary funds and they have been able to hire their own lawyer, it may very well not happen.
I'm going to get off of this subject and get into the case and close, but when cases are found to be, wrong and people are innocent, why has it been such a difficult thing for the district attorney to rescind that verdict?
Mm-hmm.
Why has it been so difficult when they find out a person is innocent? Why don't they just say, all right, we commute this, we rescind it? Why do they have to go through all of these? We release them on ROR, or we release the guys on bail, and then we go through another trial to find them innocent? Why can't they just rescind the process?
Well, I want to be clear. I mean, we have, there's a whole lot involved in both attitude and arrogance that exists when people feel they are in a position where they can never be wrong. And when they're proven wrong, their ability to step up and realize and admit that they're wrong takes a big person. I mean, we've seen that happen. The DA in Bronx County currently, Robert Johnson, has when things have not gone right and he's shown that there's been a mistake, he's stepped up. There have been other DAs that have done that across New York State, not just African Americans, whites as well. But when you have the arrogance built into your prosecutorial system, that says that if I say that I'm wrong and I did something wrong, I become weak. You don't become weak by admitting that you did something wrong. You show your strength by saying, I'm human, because none of us, as far as I know, can match Jesus Christ yet. And when we get into a situation where we're faced with that serious question of releasing someone from captivity, remember that term, because that's what brought us on the diaspora from the west coast of Africa, was captivity. When we release someone from that captivity and have the ability and have that have that power in the palm of our hands, and we don't use it appropriately, some people should be losing a lot of sleep. And I dare say that there are some DAs that, even though they realize they're doing wrong, aren't losing that sleep.
And in closing, something you said reminded me of a lot of African American attorneys are experiencing something that is a phenomenon, and that's the disbarring of African American attorneys who are very well at what they do. Mm-hmm. Do you have any final closing words about that?
There's a bit of experience that needs to be passed on from African American attorneys and all attorneys who can give lessons to younger attorneys about how to run their business, how to deal with the community, and also how to not be tempted by those things that might very well lead you into a road where you give someone the opportunity to take your license. Remember, the legal profession is one that is guarded almost above all others. And to get into that exclusive club, you've got to work your tail off. And to stay in there, don't think that you don't have to work your tail off. You do. And be able to do what is good for your community and for yourself. You have to avoid those temptations, learn how to run a successful business, because legal practice is partly a business, but also follow your conscience.
And that's going to take us out of this segment with Fred Brewington and this lawsuit against Estee Lauder. How do you see this turning out?
Well,
what is your prediction in this lawsuit?
I can't look into a crystal ball, but I can honestly and truly feel within my heart of hearts that if Estee Lauder doesn't take a clean look at this and be willing to step aside and put its own feelings of arrogance aside and deal with this, that most certainly when you read the stock page in the next 2 or 3 days as this lawsuit goes forward, that they're going to see the repercussions from good, conscious people in the community. And that will be a telltale sign for those people that count the bottom line.
In case you're just tuning in, this is the Nassau Channel. I'm Andreas 13, and now we're going to go into our next segment. I want to thank you for coming in, and thank you for continuing to be a hero in our community, because heroes are surely needed.
Well, thank you for continuing to get the news out there and spreading the word. In the tribal communities of West Africa, I say, beat that drum, brother, beat that drum.
How you doing, everybody? I know that a lot of you are out there and you're wondering what happened and what's going on. Well, the Roosevelt Media Center is now officially non-existent. So we are going to be reinventing ourselves, due to budget cuts in the county. Swazi came in office and he made a lot of promises to a lot of people. And I used to drive a news van, but as you can see, I started my show with a bicycle. Then we got funded by the county when Galata was in office, and I got that beautiful Xterra, that news van. And then we got cut by the county. We got our budget cut. Now I'm on the mini bike. Only problem is I don't know how I'm going to carry the camera on this and do stories, but all in all, I think that the county has showed their commitment to us to help us be successful, but still in all, we got cut. And now I'm on this mini bike, but I'm going to continue to fight for our community's rights. I'm going to continue to bring you all of the things that you deserve. I'm going to continue to fight our cause. And if anybody wants to help out, you can call us at 223-3433, or you can email us at www.rooseveltlongisland.org, go to our website, or africanamericannews.org, or channelzerothemovie.org, and you can email us and let us know what you want to do. But like I promised, that I made a commitment to my community, and whether the county cuts us, or whether they support us, or whether the state funds us, like Fashilo has funded us, and whether, you know, the town continues to support us, we're going to keep on doing what's right by the community. It's just that it's going to be a little slow. So I want you to stay tuned and watch our show. Once again, my name is Andreas13 from the African American News, 10 years, and we're going to be launching our own channel. But right now, I got to go and pay some bills. So let me go on to the next news story. Right now, I'm going to interview the president of the NAACP. See what he has to say. Any cops coming?